Well, I got into this appointment. There was no paperwork to fill out. I checked in, and within like 2 minutes, they called me back into the office, and I sat down, and I'm expecting to wait wait a little bit longer. But within another 30 seconds, the doctor walks in, and he sits down in front of me, and he says, "Bobby, you have cancer." And I was like, "What?" I mean, say that again. My jaw hit the desk. I mean, I couldn't believe what he said. I was so blown away, dead silent. And he goes, "I know you probably don't even believe what I just said, and we'll find an oncologist for you, but you can go." And I thought to myself, I probably even said this to him. I was like, I don't even know what an oncologist is. Like, I have cancer. What's going on? And so I was in shock, and I walked out of the office. And when I got out of the building, and it was like the perfect divine timing, my phone rang, and it was my mom. And she said, "Hey, we landed. I wasn't expecting you to pick up the phone. I thought you'd be in a doctor's appointment, but just want to let you know we're here. How did the appointment go?" And I was like, "About that appointment, Mom." And I had to tell her what the doctor told me. And, Lee, it was almost as if she was screaming, but it was dead silent. I mean, she didn't say a word. And I could just tell that, the emotion that she felt. And the only thing I remember hearing was my dad saying, Susan, what's wrong?" Now, he was in the car also, and he knew something was wrong. He could just tell by her reaction. And so we ended up meeting at my uncle's house, who still lives in New York and lived there at that time too. And I hadn't seen my parents in like a month. This is the longest I had ever been away from home. And I give my parents a big hug, and we kind of looked at each other like, what's going on? So we shed some tears and said some prayers and just had to kind of figure out what was going on in life. So a couple of days passed, and now it was Saturday. So that was a Thursday. And Saturday was supposed to be my first ever game. And like I said, I wasn't playing in the game. But I'll never forget this. My uncle's best friend, who we didn't know, because remember, we lived in Florida, comes over the house, and we never met the guy before. And he walks right up to my parents, and he knows them by name. He says, "Here, Bob and Susan, here's my keys. Take my car. You can use it for whatever you need. I can't imagine what you're going through with your family right now and your son." And they were blown away. They reluctantly took his keys. And he said goodbye to my uncle and my aunt and me. And he was there for maybe 15 minutes, and he left. And that was it. And his name was Tim, my uncle's best friend. And we're like, wow, that's the most generous thing that someone's ever done for our family. And so that was Saturday. I'll never forget watching the game. A couple of days go by. Now, we did speak with an oncologist, and he told me not to drop out of all of my classes, especially if we were going to get treated in New York. And we wanted to stay up there because we felt like the best doctors would be up there. So my first ever college class was on Monday. Went to some more doctor's appointments after that. Got up on Tuesday, do the same exact thing. Went to my second ever college class. Drove there with Tim's car. Thank you, Tim. And I came out of the class and I was hungry. So I went to the cafeteria to grab something to eat. And I was eating a breakfast burrito sitting there at this little bar type of table there. And there was one of those tube televisions, like before, like a flat screen, like this one behind me, like an old school television. It's hanging from a bracket in the corner of the ceiling and the wall. And it's like, might be 8 inches. So I'm almost squinting to watch this TV, but it's the news. Now, I don't know the news station. I don't live in New York. So I'm just watching whatever's on, right? And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, there's a plane that flies into one of the twin towers in downtown Manhattan, which is not too far from where my school was. And I was like, wow. I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, are you watching this? A plane just hit one of the towers there in New York." And I'm like, "What a horrible accident." And he's like, yeah, I'm watching this. And we're talking for maybe a minute or whatever. And all of a sudden, bam, a second plane hits the other twin tower in the World Trade Center there in New York City. And my dad was like, Bobby, this is not an accident anymore. You better get in the car and get back to your uncle's house now. Something's going on. We're getting attacked. So this was the September 11th, 2001, and the terrorist attacks were going on. And I hopped in the car. I didn't even finish the burrito. It's probably still sitting there 20 something years later. And I'll never forget this. It's a 15-minute drive from my school to my uncle's house. But Lee, it took me 9 hours to drive that. So the whole day I was in the car and I was listening to AM radio. Now, I subsequently have a master's degree in broadcast journalism. I actually love radio, worked in it, but I will never, ever listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio ever again in my life. But it was riveting. And I'm driving and there's burning towers in the distance, smoke and fire. And I'm listening to this. And I pulled into my uncle's neighborhood and I ran out of gas. I mean, if it would have been less than a mile before that, I'd have been on the highway. I don't know what I would have done. But we pushed my car into my uncle's driveway. And we're all looking at each other like, wow. So a few days ago, I'm not even sure if my life is over. And now we're wondering if the world is over. And we're looking at each other this crazy. My aunt was hysterical because she knew that my uncle was on business the night before. Now, he happened to be in Denver, but we didn't know where these planes were coming from at the time. So we were concerned that he was on one of those planes. And finally, 8 p.m. or so, the phone rings. My aunt picks it up, and it's my uncle. Praise the Lord. He's safe. He says, guys, you've probably been frantic. I'm sorry. I've been trying to get through, but the phones have been down. I'm stuck in Denver. I'm okay. I'll try to catch a flight home tomorrow. And we were ready to hang up with him. And he said, but I got to tell you one more thing. My best friend, Tim, who you just met a few days ago, he was in the towers this morning and he died.
Wow.
And we just dead silence, kind of looking at each other like, wow, what are the chances? So subsequently, we learned a little bit more about Tim, and his last name was O'Brien. He was an employee, one of the higher ups in the banking firm, investment bank, Cantor Fitzgerald, that still has their business today. And if you really want to learn more about the whole situation, I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there about their president at the time talking about how he lost everyone that morning. And there were hundreds of people that worked for Cantor Fitzgerald in the tower, and they all died there. And come to find out, Cantor Fitzgerald themselves, but also Tim specifically, were very, very generous people. They had a very generous culture there. And Tim was known for being a giving person. And the fact that he gave us his car to us was, we were, like I said, we were blown away. But come to find out, that probably wasn't that out of the ordinary for him. He was known for doing things that people would call radically generous. And he would say, I'll always take an opportunity to be generous because I'll never know when my last opportunity will be.